HIV is prevalent across the world, yet the disease is disproportionately concentrated amongst adolescents in sub-Saharan Africa. In 2015, it was estimated that 67% of newly infected 15 to 19-year-olds lived in the area, compared to 2% from Europe and Central Asia. Significantly, these proportions exclude adolescents who are born with HIV. For sub-Saharan Africans, sexual intercourse and mother-to-child transmissions are the leading causes of HIV infection. Therefore, most of these teenagers who've acquired HIV have got it through sexual intercourse. Consequently, it's easy to assume that adolescents may benefit from prevention programs that aim to reduce their likelihood of becoming infected.
One approach involves peer education programs, which aim to encourage safe sex practices by addressing misconceptions regarding STIs and the use of contraceptives. Importantly, it is the interaction between peers that distinguishes the initiative from traditional approaches like counselling from medical professionals. It is argued that the friendships made between two Chis enabled participants to talk confidently about sensitive issues such as HIV. Such programs are commonplace in sub-Saharan Africa.
Crucially, the Sustainable Development Goal of eradicating HIV by 2030 implies that the prevention of new infections is a global health priority. This target is important as statistical models suggest the number of HIV-positive teenagers will continue to rise worldwide, potentially reaching 400,000 by 2030. Given that the population of adolescents in sub-Saharan Africa has persisted to grow since 2000, shows the investment in effective prevention schemes by donors is vital.
This presentation aims to answer the question, should school-based peer education programs be used to prevent the transmission of HIV in sub-Saharan Africa? It will be argued that programs may improve knowledge regarding HIV. However, it is unlikely to cause behaviour change that would lead to a significant decline of HIV-positive adolescents. Nonetheless, like Michelson and colleagues, it is also argued that peer education may have potential when nested within broader age packages. To defend this argument, three themes will be explored: the effectiveness of peer education programs, the experiences of peer educators, and the extraneous variables that influence HIV transmission.
Peer education is not embedded in the school curriculum and takes place within dedicated HIV clubs or after school. Despite being overseen by teachers and trained by facilitators from non-governmental organisations, the students themselves are expected to take the lead in the organisation and delivery of the sessions. Peer educators are either older but still relatable, for example undergraduates, or have a similar age to their tutees. Sessions are delivered using structured presentations analogous to those delivered by teachers, group discussions and creative approaches such as music or drama performances.
Just in case of those who don't know me, my name is Junpa and I'm a peer educator.
For most 15-year-olds, standing facing a crowd of kids and talking to them about how to prevent HIV and AIDS might seem like a daunting experience. But this doesn't seem to faze Dimpo Molelejoa. She is a peer leader and is determined to raise awareness about HIV among these adolescents. And she uses a variety of games, activities and peer discussions to do it.
Theories of behaviour change provide partial support for peer education programmes. For example, the communication of innovations theory assumes that the training of peers who are popular or have similar attributes to their tutees enables health-related messages to be easily understood. This is particularly important as the health belief model argues that individuals consider their likelihood of becoming ill and how severely the illness could affect them when deciding whether to adopt preventative measures. Consequently, it appears that peer-to-peer communication of HIV knowledge may be a good strategy for enacting behaviour change. Additionally, the social learning theory partially supports the approach as it implies that messages can be reinforced by the repeated interaction between mentors and peers, something that HIV clubs are set up to achieve. These theories may explain why studies measuring the short-term impact of peer education found that participants make a significant gains in their HIV knowledge, especially amongst regular and active participants.
However, Southgate and Angleton suggest these gains can be exaggerated, and this is particularly the case when conclusions are made using statistical tests. For example, Mena, Ali and Werku report a statistically significant difference in the number of participants demonstrating comprehensive HIV knowledge before and after peer education, yet the data reveals that just 29 of the 79 students who lacked knowledge in the first place made improvements. This implies that in real terms, programs may not be as efficient as statistical inferences suggest. Furthermore, the researchers found that participants were no more likely than the control group to have a HIV test, despite demonstrating a willingness to do so. Significantly, this finding contradicts the theory of reasoned personal behaviour, which implies that this willingness is important in predicting behaviour change. Similarly, other pre- and post-intervention studies show that increases in knowledge may not lead to behaviour change like sustaining monogamous relationships, having fewer sexual partners, and using condoms more frequently. This raises further doubts regarding the theoretical basis of peer education. For instance, both the social learning and communication of innovations theories rely on educators being deemed as competent and trustworthy, yet Michelson et al. Found that participants would rather be educated by their teachers or medical professionals. Therefore, it seems that peer education cannot be justified using behavioural theories alone, and in the absence of alternative pedagogies and non-behavioural theories, it is clear that the approach lacks firm theoretical foundations.
Nonetheless, HIV programmes have been found to go into some way in empowering women. This is particularly significant as women are exposed to a greater risk of HIV transmission due to gender inequalities that perpetuate violent social norms such as sexual assault on women, a lack of female employment, and girls leaving education early to serve men. Studies have shown that programmes can provide women with the opportunities to develop skills in communication, delivering presentations, and playing an active role in the school community. Significantly, this challenges the gender norm that women should have a subservient position in society. Furthermore, Norton and Matonyi argue that the use of drama can provide females with an enabling environment to discuss taboo issues such as HIV and sexual assault. Perhaps these experiences explain why programmes have been found to reduce stigma towards HIV individuals, and the majority of whom are females. Therefore, peer education may be uniquely placed to break down gender stereotypes, which is important in abolishing gender-based violence associated with HIV transmission.
However, the conclusion that peer education empowers women can be critiqued, as there is a lack of consensus regarding how it is measured. Furthermore, males may not internalise the health messages provided by female mentors, as they see women in leadership roles as a violation of existing gender norms. Perhaps more importantly, Wolf and Africa found there was less tolerance for female educators who contradicted what they taught by fraternising with men and having unexpected pregnancy. Females were expected to conform to pre-existing gender roles and were stigmatised if they could not, sometimes being forced to leave the programme. Thus, contrary to empowering females, programmes may continue to perpetuate existing gender stereotypes through the retention of conforming females and the attrition of those who challenge the status quo.
Finally, peer educators have been found to feel pressure to continue delivering HIV information to satisfy donor expectations, despite learners expressing a need to discuss related issues such as drug use. This echoes the concerns raised by Shields regarding how easy it is for donors to push their own objectives and neglect community priorities, as their wealth makes them more powerful in the NGO-donor relationship. Furthermore, this suggests that programmes may not succeed if other related socio-economic issues are not resolved. For example, working towards no poverty reduces the likelihood of HIV transmission by prostitution. Additionally, the efforts towards gender equality aim to encourage girls to attend school and have career aspirations, so they can be less reliant on forming relationships with men to meet financial burdens. Finally, whether school-based programmes can ensure an inclusive and equitable quality education is debatable, considering more than half sub-Saharan African schools are not supplied with water or electricity. Significantly, these issues encapsulate the physiological and safety needs that Maslow implies are important if students are to be receptive to learning about HIV. Clearly, the prevention and support of HIV-positive individuals is much more complex than just providing HIV information, yet this is the main agenda on some programme donors.
Nevertheless, current approaches to HIV prevention are beginning to incorporate peer education into broader age packages such as DREAMS. The programme not only aims to increase HIV knowledge amongst adolescents in schools, but also works with families to manage their finances, facilitate parent and child dialogue regarding relationships, and provide funding for girls to continue schooling. Therefore, it may be argued that peer education could be more effective than the current evidence suggests, as this comes from standalone school-based programmes. However, due to the contemporary nature of the package, research methodologies are only starting to be developed to assess its effectiveness. In conclusion, contrary to the hypothesis that peer education leads to behaviour change, we have argued that it is unlikely to flatten the curve of HIV prevalence and therefore should not be implemented in its current form. Perhaps this is due to the false assumption that acquiring an increased knowledge of HIV equates to adolescents making healthier choices regarding sex. Significantly, findings from several studies imply that models of peer education do not fully satisfy theories of behaviour change. Efforts for females to become leaders are counteracted by the reproduction of gender stereotypes, and adolescents face socio-economic issues that must be resolved for long-term HIV prevention. Consequently, school-based programs may only act as a change agent if incorporated into broader aid packages such as DREAMS.